Welcome to social psychology. Okay, today we're continuing with our lecture on prosocial behavior. Okay, and we talked about a lot of different things already as to what influences the decision to help, right? And today we're gonna, one of those basically being, inclusive fitness, which basically means to help those that we're related to, those that are similar to us, that are more likely to be related to us, those that are familiar to us, which often includes family and people who we see a lot, right? And we've talked about the bystander effect, right? How people are often not likely to help when there's other people present, and that is due to diffusion of responsibility and pluralistic ignorance. Okay, so we're continuing with the goals of prosocial behavior, of why we help or fail to help. And another goal of prosocial behavior, of helping people, is to manage our self-image. Sometimes we help because we want to give off a certain image. Whether it's to ourselves, right? We want to appear a certain way to ourselves and also to others. So we're going to talk about these things: personal norms, religious codes, deciding not to help, and failing to seek help. All has to do with managing self-image. So let's talk about personal norms, right? One way to manage our self-image, right, for us to view ourselves the way we want to, as decent, kind, individuals, is to follow the norms, right? Especially the personal norm. A personal norm, right, is an internalized belief and value that combines to form a person's inner standards for behavior. So let me explain that. A personal norm is basically something you believe in, right? That is a part of who you are. A personal norm, for instance. And if you follow that, then that means you are behaving in accordance with who you think you are. You are following your own personal norms. An example of a personal norm might be, for instance, it says there, I believe that I personally should give blood to the blood bank. That's not my personal norm. That's just an example. But there are people who believe that you should donate blood. And that's part of what they believe. And it's part of their values. And they follow that so they can continue. They follow that, right? And they help people. And this allows them to continue to believe, that they are good people, that they are worthy individuals, whatever they believe about themselves. I personally believe, for instance, as a person myself, right? I personally believe that we should help those in need, right? We should help those that are less fortunate, right? That we should help the poor. I believe that we should help, the people who have, problems, whether those be problems in the home, domestic, or problems at work, or whatever it is, or just personal struggles. People who are suffering from depression, right? I am a psychologist after all. So I believe we should really help those that are struggling. That's a personal norm of mine. And not just people, by the way. I also believe that we should help animals. I love animals. I care about all living things, actually. And I feed the stray cats. It's part of who I am, right? We donate to the shelter, even the animal shelter, and women's shelter, and we help out, right? I personally believe, as a person, that we should help those that are less fortunate, both people and animals, by the way. It's part of who I am. And when I don't behave that way, right, it bothers me. In order for me to continue behaving the way, in order for me to continue believing what I believe of myself, I have to behave in accordance with that. So yes, when there are stray cats that come around, and every now and then there's more, right? There's some that come around, I feed them, some of them disappear, some of them stick around. But there's always cats. There's always stray cats that come around, and I feed them. And I know people say you shouldn't feed the stray cats, but then just more of them show up, and you actually end up feeding other animals that come around, like the raccoons and things like that. I personally believe that, hey, if there's a living thing out there that needs my help, whether it's an animal and they need food, whatever, I'm going to help them. That's just part of who I am. That's my personal norm. In order for me to feel the way to continue to believe that I am a certain kind of person, that I am a kind person, I need to continue doing things like that. Okay. And when I don't, it bothers me. Okay. And to share a story with you guys, there was one time when I was on a date, actually. And I remember going into the restaurant. I was about to walk into the restaurant, and right outside the door of the restaurant, there was this man, probably was a homeless man or something like that, who was there looking very sad and asking people for money, And he said, will you please give me some money? I could really use some money. And of course, I was on a date. I didn't want to be bothered, or my date to be bothered. So I just ignored him and I walked right in. And I was sitting there looking at the menu, it just really bothered me. Like, I can't believe I did that. It bothered me. And I said, you know what? I just can't do this, right? I have to go out there and I have to give this man some money, right? So I went out there, I gave him some money, and then I felt better. And then I was able to go back inside and then carry on, so to speak. But I have that personal belief. And if I don't live up to it, I don't feel good about myself. I don't, in order for me to continue to believe that I'm the person who I am, I have to follow these things. We all have these things. We all have personal norms, things we believe in. And if we follow them, right, then we continue to believe the things we believe about ourselves. We continue to manage your self-image. And we all like to think that we're nice and kind and wonderful, or whatever it is. But if you don't behave in accordance to what you believe in, then it's harder for you to think that way about yourself. So we do this as a way to manage our self-image according to, this goal, right? That's a goal we have. Something else that has to do with our self-image is religion, religious codes. People often have religious codes, right? People who define themselves as highly committed to their spiritual beliefs, right, or to a certain religion, are twice as likely to volunteer their time to help the needy. People who are religious, people who believe in God, that they have certain religious codes, are more likely to help. Okay? You are a good Christian or a good Muslim or a good Jewish person or whatever it is. Most religions have teachings that say we should help those that are needy. We should help those that are less fortunate. I don't think I know of a single religion that doesn't advocate, that doesn't teach that. So if that's part of what we believe, then we follow, and we want to believe that we are a good Christian or a good Muslim or whatever it is. And so in order for us to continue to believe that about ourselves, we have to continue to act this way and follow our religious codes. In general, I will tell you that, of course, not everyone is that committed to their religious beliefs or to religion in general or to their God or whatever you want to call it, right? When it comes to churches, it's not everyone who volunteers. It's not everyone who helps. There's actually a core group of people, usually in every church, that do most of the volunteering, that do most of the work to help others. Okay, most people just go there and they listen to the message. But there are some who really believe, right, who really live up to the code, because they really, believe that, and they really see themselves as a true, Christian or Muslim or whatever it is, and they follow these codes. And I have found that most people do not even live up to those codes. Most people will not donate money, even those at church, by the way. Most people do not volunteer, and most people will not donate gifts, right, during Christmas and things like that. But some do, because they're highly committed to those spiritual beliefs, and it defines who they are. And if they don't do those things, they're not living up to what they believe about themselves. That means they're not who they are. They don't believe that they can be who they are without doing those things. So that matters as well. Religion, by the way, can be both good and bad. Okay, here we're presenting it as a good thing, but it can also be bad. And we'll talk about that when we get to other chapters. Okay. But religion basically means that if when you follow religion, that means you follow a certain set of guidelines, certain teachings, certain codes. Okay, they're often positive things, but it could also lead to bad things that we'll talk about when we get to a different chapter. Okay, here we're talking about helping, and religion usually helps with that. Okay, other things about managing self-image: deciding not to help. Right? Sometimes people decide not to help, even people you would think that should help, like ministers or church-going people, or people who should help, often don't help. And why is that? We're going to talk about that, right? There was a study done with ministers, right? Ministers, right? These are people who are, basically that it's part of what they teach others, and part of their teaching that they should be good people and help others, help those in need, help those less fortunate, right? This study was done with ministers, okay? Ministers at a seminary were told they needed to walk to another building and deliver a brief speech. They didn't know they were taking part of an experiment, by the way, okay? Some were told that they were in a hurry, okay? Yeah, you need to be there really soon. You need to start really soon, okay? Others were told that they were late and they needed to hurry. Others were told not only, should you be there soon, it's like you should have started already. You need to get there and give this speech. Okay. Oh no, some were told they were not. I've read that wrong. So some were told they were not in a hurry, and some were told that they were in a hurry, that they were late, and you need to get there quickly so you can give this speech. And these are ministers, okay? On the way, they passed a man that was slumped over, coughing and groaning, a Confederate, someone that was pretending to need help. Those that were not in a hurry, 60% of them stopped and helped this man. And remember, these are ministers. About 40% of them did not, even when they were not in a hurry, right? They still didn't help this man. Those that were in a hurry, those that were already late, were in a hurry, only 10% of them stopped to help, right? Think about that. You know, they had to go and deliver this speech. It's part of their self-image, so to speak, and they have to go give this speech and do what they do, and, you know, that's who they are, so to speak. But sometimes we fail to notice things that are related to our self-image, right? Because we're in a hurry, or because of this or that. So the point is, when we're in a hurry, we're often likely to ignore things that actually are part of our self-image, right? We fail to help those people who we say we should help. We fail to do the things that we say we believe in, right? Even ministers are just like people, just like other people is what I should say, right? That when it's inconvenient for them, they will also not help. Okay. So that's sometimes why we don't help, because it's inconvenient. We are in a hurry, and we don't want to be bothered, right? Failing to seek help. Sometimes people who need help will fail to seek help for various reasons. There are gender differences. For instance, males are less likely to request help than females. Males in general are, you know, for several reasons. For biological reasons, because of more testosterone, things like that, which makes males more dominant, more assertive. When males do need help, they are often not likely to request it or to pretend they don't need help, because they don't want to seem weak, right? They don't want to seem that, you know, they're not manly. Males have also been taught to be assertive and strong and individualistic, things like that. So for those reasons, they're less likely to request help even when they need it. And the difference is actually strongest in those that are most sex type, those that are more traditional, those are raised in more traditional ways, right? That men don't cry, men don't show their feelings, men are strong, right? Men, you know, just don't get emotion. Men control their emotion, things like that. Things have to do more with stuff you were taught in the past. Those are people who grew up in more traditional households. Okay, those people are even less likely to receive help. I mean, to seek help when they are hurt, when they need financial assistance, because it reflects poorly on them, right? It's not helping manage their self-image if they admit that they're weak, that they're not strong, right? Because they've been taught that's how a man should be. A man should be the breadwinner. A man should have money and be strong and not cry and not get emotional. And even when they need help, they're likely not to show it. They rather pretend that everything's okay even when they need help, right? Of course, today, you know, less traditionally, right? We teach people that it's okay to show your feelings. It's okay if you're a man. It's okay to cry. It's okay to get emotional, right? You don't have to be, you know, so strong and assertive. It's okay if you are nurturing and kind. That's okay too. You don't have to be this stereotypical macho guy, right? But yes, men are less likely to seek help than women in general. Women are more likely to seek help, more likely to go to the doctor, more likely to request, you know, medication, more likely to seek out their friends when they need help. Men are more likely to pretend that nothing's wrong, and will just drink and smoke and party and act out when they're hurting rather than seeking help. Okay, let's keep going. Age also matters. By the time children get to about 7, 8 years of age, they realize that asking for help may reflect poorly on their self-esteem. Before this, they're younger, they'll ask for help. It doesn't really affect what they think about themselves so much. But the time they get 7 or 8, they have enough of a self-concept that they feel that if they ask for help, that it means that somehow that they're not so capable, that they're not as smart, right? Something like that. So they will not often seek help, even when they need it. I'm not saying all of them, but they're less likely to seek help because they're afraid of what other people may think if they raise their hand to ask a question, or they say they don't understand something. Or even if they just ask the teacher privately, right? They will often not ask for, even in that case, they often won't do that because they don't want the teacher to think that they don't understand, or maybe they're afraid the teacher's going to think that they're not so smart. That's when it starts, about 7, 8 years of age, and it continues. Okay, even now in college, right? I teach college, right? The students who need help the most almost never ask for it. They rather fail quietly, struggle quietly. The people who do ask me for help are the people who are actually doing okay and they just want to do better. The ones who need the most help almost never want to actually talk to me and ask for my help, because they're afraid that that it's going to show basically that maybe that they're not so smart, they're not so capable. They don't want the teacher or other people to think that of them. So they'd rather just fail quietly, so to speak. And that's a very bad thing. But they're managing their self-image, so to speak, trying to hide that from others so they don't have to basically show that. The teacher will still know, okay, because he knows how you're doing. Other people may not know, though, so you can hide from others the fact that you're not doing so well. And then after age 60, there's another drop. After age 60, people are again even less likely to ask for help. Why? Because you're getting older and you still want to believe that you're capable, that you can do everything for yourself. And you don't want people to help you so much. Some younger person tries to help you cross the road. And it's like, what the hell are you doing, man? I can cross the road all by myself. And they may take offense to these kind of things. And this is especially the case for men that are supposed to be strong, competent, right? And assertive and all that stuff, and should be able to take care of themselves. A lot of men, specifically when they're senior citizens, right, don't want people to help them. I can do this on my own. I can lift this thing on my own. I can still do this, right? Yes, I can still drive. And no, don't need to give me these phones with the big numbers. I can still see, I can still hear, right? You're trying to be helpful, but sometimes they take offense. Like you just think I'm old and feeble and can't take care of myself. And even when they cannot take care of themselves, they often won't ask for help because they don't want to believe that somehow they're less capable now, especially men, and they will often not ask for help. And I know someone who suffered greatly because of this. Okay, actually, my wife's grandfather, when he was 60 years old, actually, gone to some hardware store, had bought a bag of something, might have been a bag of cement mix or something like that, maybe a 60-pound bag or something like that. And as he was going to put it in, and as he was going to put it in his truck, and an older worker there offered him some help. Hey, let me help you with that. And he's like, leave me alone. I can do this by myself. What the hell you think I am? And then he basically picked up the bag, put it there, had a heart attack and died. Right? Refused to ask for help and suffered a heart attack and died. Would rather do it all by himself. He didn't want any help, even though when you're older, it can be dangerous to exert yourself so much, to lift that 60 or 70 or 90 pound, actually they come in 60 and 90 pound bags, these bags of cement mix or concrete mix. And that's what he died of, because he didn't want somebody to help him, and he refused the person's help. And probably it made him upset that somebody even offered him for help. And I'm sure that contributed to the heart attack, right? But lifting this thing is basically what did him in, right? If we would have gotten some help, probably wouldn't have happened. That happens to people where they rather suffer than actually get help. They don't want people to think that they're feeble, they're not capable, right? It's all about managing self-image. And sometimes we don't want to ask for help in general because we think it reflects poorly on that. Whether maybe you're drowning or you need help or whatever it is. I've seen it in my own family. I remember when I was younger, my uncles playing soccer, right? One of them, I don't know how, cut his leg really bad. His leg was actually squirting out blood. And you know what he said? I'm fine. I don't need to go to the hospital, right? I'm fine, right? Leave me alone. I mean, even that ridiculous, right? That's how men are sometimes. right? They say they're fine, even when they're spewing out blood, sometimes even when they're dying, right? That's how bad it can be. Managing self-image is also about managing self-esteem. Sometimes we fail to seek help to protect our self-esteem, right? Not just what we think of ourselves, but how we feel about ourselves. High self-esteem individuals are less likely to seek help. People who really believe in themselves, they're less likely to seek help because they're high self-esteem, right? They believe they can do it all, so to speak. They don't need help. They'll figure it out on their own. I don't need your help, right? But findings on gender, right? Males versus females, age, and self-esteem converge in suggesting that people fail to ask for needed help to avoid lower self-esteem. Whether you're a high self-esteem individual, male, older, or whatever it is, the reason people don't ask for help is because they don't want to lower their self-esteem. They think well of themselves, highly of themselves, and if somehow they admit to themselves that they need help, that they can't do something, that it's going to lower their self-esteem, and they don't want to do that. But it's very important to seek help in general. If you need it, you should ask for it. Don't be embarrassed. Don't feel shy. Don't feel that people are going to think less of you, right? But that's often why people don't do it. Let's keep going. Another goal of prosocial behavior, another reason why we help, is to manage our emotions and manage our moods. So we're going to talk about the role of arousal, the role of sadness, cost benefits of helping, and how helping can influence mood. Okay, so let's get going. Managing emotions and moods. This is where we get into some theories of why we help, that try to explain why people help and when they're likely to help. According to the arousal cost reward model, just like a theory that explains helping, okay? We help those who are suffering in order to relieve our own personal distress. This theory basically says, this model basically says that the reason why we help is basically selfish. We do it to make ourselves feel better. Okay? Remember, we talked about all those other reasons why we don't help. I mean, why we help, right? We're more likely to help those that are related to us, those that are similar to us, those that we're familiar with. And those are all selfish reasons for helping, to manage our self-image, right? It's always selfish. This one is basically saying, yes, it is selfish, right? That helping others actually does something else for us too. It helps us feel better. We help those who are suffering in order to relieve our personal distress. So think about it, right? Think about the example I told you guys where I was on a date and saw this man at the front of the restaurant who was there asking for money, looking really sad, looking really needy, right? And I ignored him, went into the restaurant with my date, and then felt really awful as I was sitting there, right? It bothered me. I felt stressed out. And then so I went back out. I gave him $5 and I went inside. And then after that, I was able to feel better and I forgot about the whole situation. Perfect example of this model right here, right? Helping someone in order to make yourself feel better. I didn't want to be bothered, right? But it bothered me that this person was there, right? Suffering, it affected me. So therefore, in order to get rid of that, I helped him. Helping him helped me feel better. And that's what this theory says. It says that we help others to make ourselves feel better. Think about it, right? When there's someone who needs help, right? It often bothers you. It makes you sad. It affects you in some way. The more it does, the more likely you are to help them. We will help in an emergency if we feel negative arousal. If we feel this anxiety or this negative emotion, if we feel this negative arousal. And if helping will help alleviate the unpleasant feeling. That's what the theory says. We will help people if the situation bothers us in some way. And if helping will get rid of that feeling. And I dare you to even think of a situation in which you have helped someone where it didn't alleviate your suffering. This theory basically says that when we see someone in need of help, if we feel bad about it, we are more likely to help than if we don't. So we help in order to alleviate our distress. Now I know sometimes we don't help, right? But what happens when we don't help? When it affects us negatively, right? And we don't help, it usually bothers us for a time. Now, eventually we forget about it, but usually bothers us for a time. Now, this reminds me of a time that I didn't help. And I still think about to this day, still bothers me a little bit. Sometimes it bothers me a lot when I think about it a lot. But there was this time, when I was younger, I was a teenager. I was growing up in East LA. We were poor, growing up in this poor neighborhood, gang infested poor neighborhood. And it was a neighborhood where a lot of immigrants lived, and people would basically sometimes, immigrate into this country, mostly illegally, and they end up in these poor immigrant neighborhoods, like where I lived. I remember this one time, this one man came and knocked at our door. And I opened the door. I was the only one home at the time. And I opened the door, and the man basically, looking down, because I can tell he was ashamed, to ask for help because he was a man. Okay. Holding his hat and stuff. He was holding a hat in his hands, looking down, looking really sad and ashamed, basically was asking for some help. He said, I've just come from Mexico. I just come from this country. Just come to this country, and I could really use some help. Anything you could help, anything you could give me would be helpful. And I was a teenager at the time. And I basically said, you know what? My parents aren't home. In Spanish, of course, I said, my parents aren't home. I can't help you. And I closed the door, and that's it, right? Didn't help the man, right? So this day, I still think about it. It's kind of like, all right. Let's try not to get too emotional here. But yes, it bothered me, and I did nothing about it, so to speak. If I would have helped him, right, it probably wouldn't bother me. All right, yeah, that's the negative arousal, right? All right, take a deep breath. I even felt a little bit right now, right? All right, let's move on. So I don't get too emotional about this, but that's what drives the helping according to the arousal cost reward model, right? And here's the complete model for you guys. It outlines all the things involved in helping, right? And this is a theory or a model explains what leads to helping. So there's the observation of another person, someone in a clear need of help. Maybe they passed out or whatever it is, they need some help, right? That increases negative emotional arousal. It could be that it makes you feel sad. It makes you feel kind of stressed out, anxious. It bothers you in some way. If the cost of helping is small, if it doesn't take that much to help them, right? That's the first blue oval at the top there. And if rewards are large, that's the oval at the bottom there, right? If it doesn't cost you much to help and the rewards are large, you're really helping somebody out, right? And if arousal is strong, right? If the arousal, the feeling of the anxiety, the negative arousal, if it's really strong, right? And if you have a weak connection, right? If it's someone who you feel is, someone like you, your fellow human being or something like that, right? Then there's an increased chance that you will help that person. And in my situation, right? All that was there and I still didn't help, right? There was an increased chance to help that person. I thought about it. I should have done that, but I didn't, right? But the theory says that if all this is present, you're more likely to help, okay? All these things matter. Now, in my case, yes, it was, all this was there and I still didn't help. And it, but it did bother me and it still bothers me to some extent, I was a teenager, right? I didn't have any money. My mom wasn't home, I didn't know how to help, right? Or what to do. And I just basically say, I'm sorry, my parents aren't home, and I close the door on them, right? But that's what the theory says. That is why we're likely to help, right? Under these circumstances. Right? But the big thing is, right, that you have this negative arousal, right? It affects you when you see someone in need of help. And when you help them, it makes you feel better. And then when you feel better, you don't have to worry about them anymore. Or you don't have to feel bad for them anymore, so to speak. And I know that sounds bad, right? You just forget about it, but that's what happens. Unless we continue to think about them and they still need help, right? But if we help them, then we feel better. Managing emotions and mood, more about this. Sadness in non-emergencies. Sadness is one critical thing to helping. Okay, sadness, non-emergency. So there's another piece of the puzzle here. The mood management hypothesis. Okay, it's a hypothesis that says that people use helping in order to manage their moods. This basically, it's a hypothesis, not a full-blown theory. It's just a hypothesis. It says that we help people in order to manage our moods, right? That's why we help people. The other one says, right, to alleviate our distress, right? This one says is to manage our mood. So it's very similar, okay? But it has to do more, with more than just helping people when we feel bad, because we can also help people, when we're feeling relatively okay. So it gets at the positive part as well. Throughout life, we learn that helping can lead to rewards, right? Rewards make us feel good. So we also help people, to feel good about ourselves, right? Not just to alleviate, our distress, but also so we can feel good about ourselves. And so we can get rewards down the line, right? If we help people, they're more likely to help us. Or maybe you believe in karma or something like that, that if you're good to people, they will be good to you in the future, even if it's not even if it's not the same people. It's like what goes around comes around, right? Throughout life, we learn things like that. And when we act in accordance to this, it helps us to feel better about ourselves. Okay, so we're managing our mood, but of course, it has to do with other things as well, right? Sadness is a key thing here. Helping can be triggered by events that trigger temporary sadness. Specifically, things that make us sad, right, are very likely to make us help. Okay, like research has shown, these are different kinds of studies that have shown all these things, right? That reminiscing about unhappy experiences makes us more likely to help. So all you basically do is you participate in an experiment, and they help you think about things, and they tell you, think about a time that made you sad, right? Think about experiences that make you sad. And then you get sad, and then they ask you how likely you are to help certain things, right? Certain situations or people or organizations or things like that. And it turns out when people have been thinking about sad things, they're more likely to help. Consistent with the mood management hypothesis that they're basically helping in order to make themselves feel better. Also consistent with the arousal cost reward model that basically says they're also helping to alleviate their negative arousal, right? Reading depressing statements, reading about sad things, right, on the news and things like that makes you sad, makes you more likely to help. Even failing at a task, right? When you fail at something, you fail an exam or something like that, and if you're sad afterward, and then they provide you with an opportunity to help, you're more likely to help, right? Even witnessing harm to another, right? It makes you sad. You're more likely to help, right? Or even reading about harm to other people, how people have been hurt, how even animals, things like that, right? You're more likely to help afterward. Sadness seems to be particularly important for making people help. It's not just sadness, but sadness is a key thing. Okay? We're more likely to help when we're sad. And that's why you see those commercials on TV, right? When they want you to donate to the shelter, right? It makes you sad, right? And I don't even want to think about it. It makes me sad. Just think about it, right? But it helps. It's powerful, right? You're more likely to pick up the phone and make a donation. Or when you see the things about the people in other countries, an earthquake, a tsunami, or whatever it is, right? It makes you feel sad, and then you're more likely to pick up the phone and donate something. Sadness is powerful. And those people in those commercials, they know what they're doing. Okay? Now, here's the thing. It sounds like they're manipulating you. But if it's for a good cause, then it's for a good cause, okay? Yes, you should help the children, the poor animals at the shelter, right? You should help people in need. So you should help, right? And they may often make you feel sad for that reason. Some people, by the way, just change the channel. Oh, I don't want to think about that. It makes me too sad. And then they don't do anything about it. They don't help because they were able to avoid the sadness, right? But it's a very powerful motivator, right? Sadness. Let's keep going. More about managing emotions and moods, the cost benefits of helping. Okay, so how do the costs and benefits of helping factor into all of this? So there was a study that was done. Students in one study were put into either a happy mood, sad mood, or neutral mood. Who helps more? Those that are happy, those that are sad, those that are in a neutral mood. okay? They were given an opportunity to help a nonprofit organization. Okay, so somehow or other, they made them feel happy, or they made them sad, or they made them, feel neutral. Probably with what they read, by the way. They probably read things that made them happy, or they read things that made them sad, or they read things that were kind of neutral, things that didn't really affect their emotions or their mood. And then they were given an opportunity to help in an organization. Okay. The benefits of helping were either low. They were told they would be helping a little league, right? Which is okay, right? You're helping a little league, but those aren't always the most needy people, or it's not a great, wonderful cause, right? There's other organizations that deserve more help, right? Or maybe more likely to be considered, right? But yeah, you're helping. It's low benefit, or maybe the benefit is high, right? You're helping the American Cancer Society, or you're helping, feed the starving children, or something like that, right? Something that's obviously more important, where they need more help, right? Rather than just you playing baseball or basketball or football or something like that, right? Helping kids like that are just going to be playing those sports. So it's high benefit, right? If it's something more like the American Cancer Society. And the costs of helping were either low. You are told that all you have to do is sit at a donations desk and sit there, right? And wait for people to pass by and ask them if they want to help, and deposit some money there in that, in some little box or something. Or the costs of helping are high. You have to go and knock on people's door, go door to door and tell people about the organization and ask them if they want to donate money. That is a lot more difficult to do. It takes a lot more effort, okay, than just sitting at a desk somewhere outside as people pass by. Say, hey, you want to help out? Hey, you want to help? No big deal if people just ignore you, right? But if you go somebody's door to door, you have to talk to them, and that's more difficult to do, okay? Approach people, knock on their door, go to their private place, so to speak, their residence, right? All of this, right, combines, and it gives us these results. So let me review. So you have either happy, sad, neutral, combined with either low or high benefit of helping, combined with low or high cost of helping. What you have here is 3 possibilities: happy, sad, neutral, times 2 low or high benefit, times 2 low or high benefit, or low or high cost, okay? 3 times 2 times 2 gives you 12 possibilities, 12 different groups, 12 different conditions that have to be compared. And here are the results. There's a lot of information here, okay? So that's why I have the things written there, so you can understand it. So here's the thing. So you could see there, percent volunteering to help, right, from 0 to 80. That's the vertical line there on the left. Horizontal line, you have happy mood, neutral mood, sad mood, right? And you have the yellow bar represents, that represents high benefit, low cost. Okay, let's go in a row, okay? Let's go in order, okay? So the light blue represents low cost, low benefit. The yellow represents high benefit, low cost. The pink represents low benefit, high cost. And the gray represents high cost, high benefit. Okay, and you can see that if you just take the straight out average of happy, neutral, or sad, you combine the scores, those that are in a happy mood are more likely to help, more likely to volunteer. When you're in a good mood, it's like, sure, I'll help out, right? I'm in a good mood, right? When you're in a good mood, you're more likely to help people. We haven't talked about that, but that is the case, right? If your dad's in a good mood and you're asking for some money, he's more likely to give you some money than when he's in a bad mood, okay? So when we're in a good mood in general, we're more likely to help, more likely to, give somebody $1, volunteer for something, right? That's what they showed, okay? When you're in a neutral mood, not as likely to help. You can see the bars are all lower. When you're in a sad mood, that is what is interesting. When you're in a sad mood, almost all of them are lower except one, right? Except the yellow one, the yellow bar there. When the benefit of helping is high and the cost is low, and you are sad, that is when you're likely to help the most. That is the highest bar at all. Sad students help more when the benefits are high and the costs are low. Sadness is powerful. You're very likely to help when you are sad if it's easy to do so and you're helping for a great cause. So that commercial about the starving children somewhere in the world, right? Probably outside of the US, right? Where they show the children sad, right? Poor, children that are very skinny and things like that. And all you have to do, right? They're going to make you feel sad when you see these kids, right? And all you have to do is pick up the phone, right? And call, and give your credit card number and tell them how much you want to help, right? That's all you have to do. It's very easy. Nowadays, it's even easier. There are apps, right? You can just click here, right? Or swipe here. Be careful, though, that the thing is legitimate, okay? There are a lot of scammers out there. But that's when people help the most, when they are sad and it's easy to help and it's high benefit. That's the interesting thing, right? Sadness is powerful. But if we just compare all the bars, those that are happy are the ones who are most likely to help. Those that are in a good mood, you could say. Let's keep going. Now, this leads us to pure altruism. Is there such a thing as pure altruism? Researchers have debated that, talked about that, right? Pure altruism is when you help for purely unselfish reasons. It says there, pure altruism, behavior that benefits another intentionally for no external or internal reward. Pure altruism is when you help someone and it doesn't do anything for you. When you help someone for a purely selfless reason, you get nothing out of it. It does nothing for you and you still help them. That is pure altruism. You have to ask yourself if that's even possible. Can you even help someone without getting something out of it? Right? Because most of the time you help someone, you look at someone who needs help, you're bothered by it, and you help them and then you feel better. So you are getting something out of it. Or maybe you help someone so that you can look good to other people, or the organization can look good, right? Your organization helps, right? Every time we help, pretty much, we get something out of it. It's always selfish in some way, okay? So is there such a thing as pure altruism? Does it exist? Can there be helping that occurs for purely selfless reasons, where we get nothing out of it? There's no good reason why we should help and we still do. Is such a thing even possible? Well, in order to understand this, you need to know about perspective taking. Perspective taking is the process of mentally putting oneself in another person's position, right? If you can somehow put yourself in that person's shoes, for instance, right? That's perspective taking. That's going to affect whether you help or not, of course. If you can put yourself in that person's shoes, you're more likely to help them, right? But is it selfless, right? Is there such a thing as pure altruism? So there's this hypothesis called the empathy altruism hypothesis. The empathy altruism hypothesis says that when one empathizes with the plight of another person, one will want to help that person for purely altruistic reasons. It says that when we can place ourselves in that person's shoes, so to speak, when we can imagine ourselves as that person, then we can help that person for purely selfless reasons. And as you guys see, as you guys are probably thinking already, this is debatable, okay? I could still see that as selfish, okay? Like when you can place yourself in somebody else's shoes, when you can imagine yourself as them, and that's why you help them, to some extent, it's like you're helping yourself. You see yourself as that person. I don't really see it as pure altruism, but that's what the hypothesis says, that if we can do that, right? If we can place ourselves in that person's shoes, then we're helping for purely selfless reasons, okay? Empathic concern is when we have compassionate feelings caused by taking the perspective of a needy other, right? It's basically when we can just place ourselves in that person's shoes. You know what it's like to be poor, right? You know what it's like to be an immigrant, right? That has no money and no job and that kind of stuff, right? Or you know what it's like to be a woman, right? That is being beaten up by her husband or whatever it is, whoever the person is that needs help. You can see yourself as them. That's empathic concern, right? You can place yourself in their shoes, so to speak. according to the empathy altruism hypothesis, when you help them, when you can see yourself in their shoes, so to speak, and you help them, you're doing it for purely altruistic reasons. But I still think it sounds like you're helping yourself. It's like you see them as you. So there's this experiment that was done. Students in one experiment were given the opportunity to help a suffering student. Her name was Elaine. They can help her by taking her place in an electric shock experiment. So there's this experiment that involves electric shock. And Elaine is the one who's going to be receiving electric shock. And I'm sure they help you try it out, right? And you'll see that it's painful, right? Here's the thing, though. Elaine is not really going to get shocked, okay? They just want to make you believe that. There's deception in this experiment, as there is in a lot of experiments that, involving social psychology. So the student is going to be shocked, and you can help her out, okay? You can help her out by taking her place. You can volunteer to be the person that gets shocked instead of Elaine, okay? Here's the thing, though. You are told that you can just leave immediately if you don't want to watch her suffer, right? You don't want to see this, right? You can just leave. Half of them were told, right? You know what? You don't have to deal with any of this. If you want, you can just leave. And we'll give you credit for the whole thing, right? For participating in this study. You'll get your class credit, whatever it is, or your payment if they're paying participants, right? You can just leave if you want to. You can leave immediately. Half of them were told that. The other half were told, you have to stay and watch as she's being shocked. And of course, that's going to increase distress, maybe sadness, things like that. But remember, she's not really being shocked. It's fake, okay? Here's what they found, okay? Students given the easy opportunity to escape usually took it. That's sad, okay? Those that were told, you know what? If you don't want to be here, you don't want to watch this, you can just leave. And most of them, okay, I'm out of here, right? They didn't even help, right? But if they felt high empathy for Elaine, they were more likely to help her out, right? If they could see themselves as Elaine, as put themselves in Elaine's shoes, so to speak, then they were more likely to help her out, even if they could just escape the situation. How they figured this, I don't really know the details, but they probably asked them afterward, like, why did you help Elaine, right? And they probably found that it was those that basically could see themselves as Elaine that were more likely to help her and take her place, even though they could just leave. Batson and colleagues, the ones who did the study, right, argue that empathy, right, engages pure altruism and overrides selfish motivation. That they say this is an example of pure empathy. They could have just left and escaped the whole situation and not felt bad about it. Okay, but some of them chose to help her, and it was those that had empathy. Empathy basically engages pure altruism. This is when we're helping for purely selfless reasons, according to Batson and colleagues. I still think that there's selfishness in there. When you see yourself as Elaine, right, it's like you're helping yourself. It's like it's you, right? Now, there's other explanations. Cialdini and colleagues, they argue something similar. They say that there's an egoistic explanation for these findings. They say that, no, this is still not pure altruism. They say that empathy causes an observer to feel kinship with the victim, causes the observer to feel connected to the victim, thus tapping in the selfish motivation, right? To me, it's just like you're helping yourself. They go further to say that they, serving, to serve myself by serving those who share my genes. They go further and say, basically, when you see yourselves as that person, it's like you're helping yourself and you're helping to basically promote your own genes. So they go a step further and say that this is evolutionary, right? That they're still promoting they're not really promoting the survival of their own genes, but when they see themselves as that person, it's like they're helping themselves. They didn't have to talk about genes. They don't have to go that far, but they did. I just say, it just seems like you're helping yourself, right? You can really see yourself as that person. And that's in general is something that happens, right? when that immigrant knocks on your door, right? And asks you for help, right? You know, doesn't have a job, doesn't have any money. When you know what it's like to be them, when you started out that way, so to speak, you're more likely to help them, right? It's kind of still selfish to some extent, right? It's like you're helping yourself, right? You're still doing a good deed, by the way, but it's hard to argue for pure altruism. It's hard to think of an example or a form of helping where you don't get something out of it, where it's not selfish. That is the struggle there. That is the difficult thing to understand about helping. That leaves people with a bad taste in their mouths, actually. That helping is always selfish, that it always does something for you. And that's why we help. We never do it when we get nothing out of it. We always get something out of it, but maybe it's still good, right? We get something out of it, so do they. That's where I'll stop. So I'll stop recording.